Labor forecasting in HR's eyes doesn't read as trustworthy, often perceived as messy, and seemingly requires a statistics course. In reality, forecasting analytics can be simple and the number one defense when it comes to lowering labor costs. Today, Kim McNeil and I will be covering how to utilize labor forecasting to minimize labor costs and raise ROI. Let's get into it. You used two very important words, and I want to highlight this for our next part, talking about forecasting and specifically labor forecasting, right? And I love the point you brought up on seeing the data when you got it right. I think that's really, really important. A lot of the times people only start looking at data and what's happening, what's going on, why are things falling apart here? Why are we not hitting staffing levels like at all, like 0% success in that side? Whatever it is that the data you're looking at, it tends to be turned to in the inopportune moments. Instead, taking that time, again, if we're talking about taking off some of that admin task and putting it on technology or whatever it might be, and having that time set aside for yourself as HR to look at that data, look at that historical data and see, all right, this is when we were absolutely killing it in every aspect and we were doing really good and call outs were at an all-time low, whatever it is, versus scrambling and looking at, things are just everywhere, all over the place. It's not looking too good. And then comparing and contrasting the two, I think you can't take one side without the other, right? So to kind of tie it all in, talking about labor forecasting, Kim, I'm curious what your definition of labor forecasting is. I do think that there's some confusion around it a lot of the times.
Yes, they can. And it, it can make you feel that you're doing something very, scientific or
Right.
out there, out of the bounds of business or HR professionals. So in my opinion, look at it as how an employer is looking at their labor costs, right? Looking at their workforce and using that to determine how to meet the needs of their business or business operations. So you have your prime objectives as a business, the goals you're trying to reach, client, expectations. All of that is your operations or a part of your end goal, and how the labor force fits into that. How do we meet those deliverables?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you bring up a really great point, and feeling in HR, mostly feeling like I need a mathematics or statistics degree to be able to crunch these numbers. Of course, technology helps a lot here. I mean, we can speak from, our end on workforce that, we have clients like Domino's Israel using our labor forecasting tool a ton. I mean, it's cut down, I think they've had, I wrote down here, 9% increase in customer satisfaction. And that's absolutely huge. It was a really big issue for them. And obviously having the automation side of things to, schedule and the time and attendance and remaining compliant within their regions was absolutely huge. And then the labor forecasting tool just did it automatically for them. They nailed staffing levels. But making sure that it's understood from a very baseline perspective that you can do this yourself. Technology is great, but at the end of the day, you can actually do this. And it's just the matter of how you define it and kind of how you apply it. So I want to turn to this next slide, if I can pull it up here, talking about why labor forecasting, why it's important. So looking at, some of these points, specifically some of these first ones, understand what new roles and functions a company should seek to fill and which ones it should cut. Understand what roles and functions might require reduction or elimination altogether. Forecasting the value of success a prospective employee can bring to the company. Obtaining actionable insights. And then I want to skip down to this bottom one, make data-driven business decisions, say that 5 times fast, unfair and cost-effective worker compensation and incentives. I think that last one does a really good job of kind of tying in on exactly this question that we're presenting, why labor forecasting, because those data-driven decisions are exactly what puts HR at, the seat at the table. It really helps them kind of pull that seat out and, has a voice at the end of the day for leadership and C-suite. So Kim, my question for you is, why is labor forecasting important when it comes to minimizing overtime and in turn labor costs?
So I think especially your slide here hits on some things that I think go, take a back burner. And what I mean by that is when we often think of labor forecasting and we think of overtime and cost, we're thinking of money, right? We're thinking about dollars and cents.
For
We're
sure.
thinking about, controlling, operational expenses. But there's a people element here. And, HR is in a unique position. They both need to be thinking about a great HR professional or a good one, right, should be thinking of both the needs of the business as well as the needs of the employees. So if you're not properly engaging in this process, right, you're potentially, having employee retention issues and engagement issues because now people are overworked, right? They don't enjoy their job. Things don't look like they're being properly managed. And then eventually with all this overtime, yes, the labor costs are going up, but their base salary may be going up. And the overtime rate for an hourly employee may not be in line with, let's call a spade, the increasing costs in our economy right now with inflation.
Yep.
So you're really doing yourself a disservice of not trying to approach this task at all. On two fronts, both your overall operational expenses and bottom line and meeting the needs of your clients, as well as meeting the needs of your internal employees and your internal clientele, because there's going to be a breaking point. And you can only throw money at a situation, to be honest, in my experience, for so long, before it begins to turn the tide with employees.
Yeah, I love that. I think talking about throwing the money at the situation, you can only do that for so long. That is absolutely key for a lot of people to hear. I think that there is kind of that disconnect between, all right, how much longer can we be dealing with this issue? And, like you said, throwing money at it before it kind of, doesn't even out at the end of the day. It doesn't necessarily have any impact, and it's actually just draining even more labor costs, and ROI is not looking good. So I think that's such a good point. What are some best practices to implement forecasting analytics into other protocols outside of labor costs, like recruiting, upskilling, training, etc.?
So I think the first touch point is, I know oftentimes with controlling labor costs, we often look to, and I can say from my past, experience, to, okay, we need more bodies, right? We need, more individuals to get this done efficiently. And, yes, that may be part of it. But I think training, are people really properly trained? You could have individuals, particularly when we're dealing with shift work or in a manufacturing environment, even, or a retail environment, where they could be, they could be on autopilot. Yeah. And everybody sometimes needs a touch up, right? If we're taking the time to, a lot of times as HR professionals, make sure that year after year, people are trained on compliance needs, right? Or, hey, we've got to take our yearly training on, harassment or this, which are all great things. Mm-hmm. We also may need to schedule in some time of, hey, is everybody optimized? Do we really understand what the policy and procedure is here for this? Are we really doing the job in the most efficient way? Is it time for a touch point there? And that may be retraining, that may be upskilling. Is there a better way to do this? Can we bring technology in here to help us do a piece of that? So I always say, before you move to bringing more bodies in, and almost to go back to my previous statement, throwing money at the problem, we need to look at, okay, what we're doing, does that even work to begin with? Is there a better way to do this? Can we bring technology in? Is there retraining? Is there upskilling that needs to be done? And starting there first, and then you can determine if there's enough bodies, right? Do we need to bring people in and look at recruitment in those other aspects? Or do we need to move these people in other places and bring new people in? But first, you've got to look at what you've got.
Exactly. It kind of goes back to the theme on looking at historical data, right? And seeing, all right, we did something right here. What was it? Can we replicate it? If not, what do we need to bring in? If that's external sources, fine. What do we need to do to actually make that happen again? Or, do we need to, like that last slide said, do a reduction in workforce or do an increase in workforce in some way? Do we need to upskill, uptrain, whatever it is? And yeah, exactly. And using those analytics to kind of see where those numbers are, it's perfect. So how should HR and management work together to use analytics, forecast peak periods, and adjust workforce levels?
So, thinking from a specific example for me, I did spend time for a while in federal government contracting. And as a part of that, we did have a lot of shift in labor intensive tasks due to the nature of some of these contracts. And I would get a lot of complaints. There's one specific department I can remember. I got a lot of complaints about not just the dissatisfaction from the employees because of the amount of hours they were doing. People felt like they couldn't take time off. They were always at work. They weren't seeing their families. And it was a great opportunity for me and the manager to sit down together, collaborate, network. What are you hearing? This is, yes, I can tell you from a high level, oh, hey, we need to analyze this. Let's do a job analysis. Let's look at the work. Let's look at your workload. Let's pull the historical data. But no one is going to want to hear that information if you don't have a relationship with them, if you haven't taken the time to really hear them out. You can't, oh, you're having a problem. Well, here, let me show you my, 5 different spreadsheets and charts and graphs. All of that's great, but you do need to take the time to really hear them out, right? Go see, if possible, the issue firsthand for yourself, right? Getting to know people, building that relationship building, so that when you do present the information and you do start coming with facts and figures and numbers and, a whole lot of things that a lot of people, let's be honest, don't really want to dig into on a day-to-day basis.
Of course.
They can see the relevancy of it. They can respect your opinion on it because you took the time to understand them and build that relationship. So before there's an issue, I would encourage professionals to, use this opportunity, new year, to start building and networking those relationships so you can start hearing what are the issues with the labor and begin to plan forward with that and show the data, get the information, understand where they're coming from.
Thank you so much for watching that segment from our webinar on how to keep labor costs in budget with rising wages. If you would like to watch the full webinar, click this video here and be sure to subscribe for more content like this.